Well, this final project will be a refreshingly shorter one as we get to the end of the semester, but I didn't think it'd be complete without looking into how climate denial spreads through digital media. And so what we have here is some pretty good reporting here for the Center for Countering Digital Hate, and they're looking into pretty much the money they make and the reach they have of the 10 fringe publishers who fuel 69% of digital climate change denial. It's a worthy read. It's even though it's kind of long, it really isn't that dense of a text. And so for your assignment, you're going to Google any one of these sites. Excuse me. Breitbart, let's say, plus COP26. That COP26, Congress of Partners 26, that refers to the Copenhagen Climate Summit of just a couple of months ago. Take, for example, the Washington Times. They're a reliable right-wing climate denialist group. And just look at their titles here. Cold years are coming, chill out about global warming, and drowning in false alarmism. You've heard all that stuff before. So the Washington Times is always kind of reliably right-wing. And then if you look at the Daily Wire, that's kind of a Rupert Murdoch based publication, that is Fox News, you'll see how, DiCaprio's movie on climate change is snubbed. The people at COP26 were filthy. And there's a hypocrisy of the climate conference. We've got to look into the White House travel, the fossil fuel emissions for people who went to that. And so you just have a lot of basically pretty targeted hits. If they can't really argue with the science of climate change, at least they're happy to trash the reputations of those who are trying to do something about it. And so what I want you to do is search any two of the Toxic 10 plus COP26, and then do a short write-up that explains how they frame climate change. That would be, your critical thinking, stating what their point of view is, the message they're trying to get across, and then some quotes or even a headline that backs up that point. Just to do kind of a final sampling, most of your internet stuff like this is kind of preaching to the converted. That is, they're just trying to fan the flames of already established prejudice. This article, by the way, it's worth a read here. They talk about how the most extreme conspiratorial and damaging content is rewarded with amplification. That is, the more over the top they are, the more hits their message will get, the more visits their paid advertisers will get, and the more money they will make. So it's kind of a way of fomenting a conflict, creating a little internet war, getting people angry on both sides, and making money as people read the content and click on the ads that are joined to the content. So it's really, it's an interesting thing. It's a big money-making thing. You don't know how much they believe it. Google generated up to $5.3 million in Google ads for climate skeptics. Facebook makes millions of dollars on it. These are some of the cool ones to look into. Town Hall Media, that's Heritage, just to give you an idea. Media Research, that's Exxon. So those two would be good to look into, as well as Washington Times and Newsmax and Breitbart. Russian state media, I highlight that only because it reminds me that Russia is an oil state, or as the late John McCain said, Russia is a gas station. So it's in their interest to confuse everybody about climate change because they have no other source of income. And it just kind of, here's a request: stop making money off of climate denial ads. These are the same 10 people. Gives you an idea of how many people they reach, how many views, 185 million. And it does break down, the number of articles. I don't know what was going on in January, February 21, but that was like a real hot time for clicking on climate denial information. And it's just kind of a fun thing to look at, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't understand just how much misinformation is taken out over the internet. And Facebook always claims it's going to crack down on disinformation, but apparently it missed 92% of the climate denial articles. Google makes plenty of money. This thing does tend to repeat itself. It breaks the revenue down, total revenue, and then this is for Google and the different climate denialist groups that basically Google makes, let's say, $475,000 from Breitbart, but Breitbart makes over $1 million. So, you know, they attach ads to this inflammatory content and people click and they get paid a lot of money. So again, it's kind of a sleazy thing. I'm not even sure people believe in it. They also have a lot of requests. This site does. They show you who's funding it, how much money these people make, and to let you know that they're really about making money and the numbers of visits, etc. And so it's just about digital literacy. You can see some of these titles are quite good. I love this one, Mark Morano. You'll remember him from the movie. He's a climate denialist loudmouth, and he writes about how lockdowns are essentially a model for Green New Deal's planned recession. In other words, the government's already controlling us now with masks and limits on how freely we can move. And then once there's this socialist green recession, we'll be trained to be controlled by the government, which is, you know, totally groundless and batty as hell. But it goads the fears of people who believe this stuff. And it keeps their anger alive, as us to tweak somebody in the gut and have them think, oh my God, the socialists are at it again. So it's really, really quite targeted. They know exactly what they're doing. They're making people more angry. Then we get the Western Journal. More natural disasters are not occurring. Okay, well, that's counterfactual. We are in the twilight zone. Newsmax. Biden needs a climate history lesson. This is almost like the Heritage, where it's happened before, it'll happen again, and fossil fuels have nothing to do with climate change. So it's just kind of recycling a lot of nonsense. And look at the title here, Climate Alarmist Predictions that went wrong. You can't trust them. That goes back to Luntz. Scientists can't predict anything. So you're going to get a lot of really predictable frames from Luntz, from other people, regurgitated in these past few months. You know, Al Gore's climate alarmism, that's like the Heritage, or Ted Cruz calling it religion. And climate change cult worship. I love this. That's the Washington Times. So they just have a lot of grand stuff and nonsense, but it works. Joe Biden's climate change scam. It really works, and it rattles the people who are dead against it. Climate fraud and the climate lockdown. Yes, indeed. And climate alarmism has become a growth industry. Good, good, good. All this fun stuff. There was never a claim of settled science more ripe for ridicule. Okay, what fun. So anyway, just to give you a flavor, I want you to do that. And it's a simple assignment. Go back to it real quickly. You can, over here. Just search any of the Toxic 10. They're listed several times in the article. And do a short write-up about how they frame it, or how they attacked the people who went to the summit. Just how they turn people away either from the science of climate change or the people who are trying to do something about it. And I hope this is kind of a good final assignment. It's that one kind of frontier that we can't ignore when we look at the reach of the disinformation cycle.